So I have a question for all of you. How many schools do you think we have in India? We have 1.5 million schools. Yes, 15 lakh schools in the country. And now, if I was to ask you how many schools does China have, what would you say? Only 2.5 lakhs. So for a country which is more populous than ours and 3 times our size, China has only 1/6 of our schools. And when it comes to learning, Chinese kids are amongst the top 5 globally, and Indian kids, unfortunately, they're in the bottom 5. So 50% or more of our kids in India cannot read fluently, cannot do basic addition. And even when we look at US, Brazil, or Indonesia, it's exactly the same. As a country, we have one of the largest footprints of schools and one of the deepest learning crises. My experience actually says that our learning crisis is linked to our footprint. So today, I'm going to propose that India needs to shut down half its government schools. Yes, you heard me right. I believe that if we want to improve education in India, not for a few, but for all of our kids, each and every one, we need to shut down 5 lakh schools, 5 lakh government schools in the country. I work in education. I've been working in education for nearly 10 years now. My team and I, we work with central government as well as state governments. We worked with 5 states, nearly 2.5 lakh schools, and about 3 crore kids. Because of my work, I get to visit a lot of schools. And this is what a typical government school looks like. It has 45 to 50 kids and perhaps 2 classrooms. Electricity and water are now pretty common. Computers and libraries are fairly distant dreams. This school is allocated 2 teachers, no principal, no clerk, and 1 cook by the administration. That's it. So how does a school like this actually run? Well, early mornings in these schools are a fairly excited chaos. There are children sauntering in at various points of time. There are kids playing in the playground. There are other older kids who are helping the teacher clean the veranda, perhaps carry books back into the classrooms. And then there's a morning assembly, and all the kids walk into their classrooms. But it is when you enter a classroom that the scene becomes fairly depressing. Imagine one teacher trying to teach classes 1, 2, and 3 all together in one room, because her peer is teaching classes 4 and 5. The period is math, and she's wondering, what should I teach? Should I be teaching numbers from the class 1 book? Or perhaps addition from the class 2 book? Or maybe multiplication from the class 3 book? In the end, what she decides is to do a sing-song rendition of the tables, and that's what all the kids do. They do it, yet they learn nothing. And it's no different when we get into English or Hindi. The teacher is genuinely lost in terms of what to teach, and so are all the children. After a couple of hours of this, she moves into the staff room because there's no clerk. She does the accounts, she marks the attendance, she transfers the scholarship money into kids' bank accounts. The kids are basically making merry. At noon, she has to supervise the midday meal, the cooking and the serving of it. After lunch, there are some half-hearted but futile attempts to get the kids back into classes. And by 1:30, the entire school disperses. I don't think you or I would call this a school. At best, we would call it a daycare center serving a meal. And this is not the story of 1, but nearly 5 lakh schools in our country today, all of which run with very poor resources and 1 or 2 teachers, and thus no teaching happens. How did we get here? I think from a fairly faulty policy around how to increase enrollments. So when we wanted to bring children into schools, what we decided was that we are going to take schools to every child rather than bring children into schools. So what the government has done over the last 20 years, all our state governments, is that they have built many, many, many tiny schools in every village, every hamlet, and every nook and corner of the country. So yes, we've given the children a place to go to. but unfortunately, not really a place to learn. And in my time in education, I have seen many valiant attempts at making education happen in these schools. We've given the teacher lots of training. We've given her a computer. We've even given her a guest teacher for a few hours to help teach. But nothing works, because it is nearly impossible to actually make sure that there is high-quality teaching in a school which is run by one or two teachers end to end. So what really is the option? I am going to paint an alternative picture. Recently, I went to a school in Jharkhand where 3 such schools had been merged into one. So there was a school with 150 kids and 4 teachers, and into this was merged a second school with 50 kids and 2 teachers, and a third school with 25 kids and 1 teacher. Today, this school has 225 kids, but it has 7 teachers. All the kids from the smaller schools, they have access to a better playground, better facilities, better infrastructure. There were 3 cooks across the 3 schools, so one of them acts as a sweeper, and the second one as a clerk. The government is using the saved money from the 2 smaller schools to install a library and a few computers. But what is really exciting about this school is when you go inside a class now, because every class has its own teacher. Class 2 has its own teacher today, class 3 has its own teacher. Teachers know what to teach, they know which book to teach from. Children are getting a customized education, and they're truly learning. When I go to this school, I spend a lot of time talking to the kids. And the students, they're genuinely happy now, because they do realize that they're learning far more than what they did before. They do have a slightly bigger hope for a better future. I also spend a lot of time talking to the parents. And yes, all of them were initially hesitant about sending their kids to a school which is slightly further away. But today, they love the discipline of the big school. This is not a stray example. There are 4,700 schools in Jharkhand which have been merged out of their total of 40,000 schools. There are places where kids are now coming to schools in school buses, and they love the bus. There are other schools which are so big and so well-resourced, a few of them, that they're starting to look like DPSs. Government schools starting to look like DPSs. 7 lakh kids have benefited. In Rajasthan, over the last 4 years, they have merged 20,000 schools into bigger schools, benefiting nearly 20 to 30 lakh kids. And in the last National Achievement Survey of kids across India, Rajasthani kids stood first or second in the country. A few years ago, they used to be as low as 25th. What has started in Jharkhand, what has started in Rajasthan, has to be replicated across the country. So if it's such a no-brainer, why does it not happen? 2 big reasons. Firstly, I think a lot of us feel that if the school is merged, if it moves further away, children will stop going to schools, there will be dropouts. My team and I, we have supported and studied thousands of mergers across the country, and our data shows exactly the opposite. When mergers, when they happen thoughtfully, enrollments actually go up. Because think of that poor parent who is spending money out of his or her pocket to send their child to a private school. When they see a public school improving, they do pull them out of the private school and put them back into a public school. Case in point, once again, Rajasthan, where in the last few years, enrollments in public schools have gone up by 5 to 7%. There are lines in front of some of their schools. The second reason typically for opposing mergers is teachers. They do not want to go to a school further away. They don't want to be in a more disciplined environment. So oftentimes what happens is that these protests, teachers or other people reach politicians, MLAs, and MPs, and without knowing enough, these processes are put to a stop. In my time in education, I have seen so many state governments try and merge subscale schools, and every time I have seen it come to a grinding halt because of the wrong reasons. We have nearly 3 crore kids who study in 5 lakh subscale schools in India. All of these schools run with 1 or 2 teachers. These kids deserve a better education. So here I am today urging all of us. I'm urging the politicians, academicians, people from government, media, and NGOs. I think we do need to reconsider our biases. Sometimes more is not better. Sometimes we need less. And to improve education in India, we need to shut down half our government schools. Thank you.